Joining us now is Asher Fredman with the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
President Trump announced his 20-point peace initiative. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a new beginning for Gaza and the Middle East. What are your thoughts on the plan, and how likely is it that Hamas will accept it?
I think that, first of all, President Trump demonstrated his support for the goals of removing Hamas from power, bringing all the hostages home, and creating a better and more stable future for Gaza and for Israel and for the Middle East. And that's a blessing, I think, for Israel and for the region. On the other hand, I think it is very unlikely that Hamas will, in fact, release all 48 hostages within 72 hours of the plan being accepted. I think they'll probably come back with some excuse like, oh, well, we don't know where they all are. We have to look for them. They're being held by other groups. Or they'll come back and say, okay, we'll release all of them, but only over several months, only based on benchmarks, only after Israel leaves. And then the question is, what is Israel's response? Does Israel say, okay, then it's off the table, we're going back to a high-intensity war? Or is there pressure for Israel to treat that as a positive response, despite it obviously not being what was presented tonight?
We also heard Prime Minister Netanyahu warn that Israel will finish the job if Hamas rejects the peace deal, which includes granting Hamas terrorists who give up their arms in favor of peace amnesty by redeveloping Gaza. How might this alter the region's security dynamics and diplomatic landscape?
I think, to be frank, experience has shown us that regional international bodies are ultimately not effective in preventing determined terrorist organizations from at least maintaining their military capabilities. We saw that with Hezbollah, where we had a UN force for many years, and Hezbollah was nevertheless able to build a huge terror arsenal. I think that, again, even if we get our hostages back, if the 48 Israeli hostages are released, even if ultimately what we have is a long pause in the fighting rather than a new reality in Gaza, this will still be a tremendous contribution of President Trump to the region.
You mentioned that you are skeptical about the hostages being released, and the plan does include the release of the hostages from Gaza, but then also prisoners from Israel. What verification or enforcement mechanisms should be built in to any agreement?
Well, obviously, if Hamas doesn't release all of the 48 hostages, then it should be clear that they are not honoring the agreement. And in my view, at least, the agreement should not be implemented anywhere. There seems to be an apparent contradiction between one part of the written agreement, which says that even if Hamas says no, we'll begin this process of an international force and a peace board and Tony Blair in certain parts of the Strip. And what President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu said at the press conference was that if Hamas says no, all bets are off, we go in to defeat Hamas. I think that's very clear. And of course, we will need very, very strict oversight mechanisms to prevent, for example, if we now bring in cement or electronics or heavy equipment into the Gaza Strip, supposedly to rebuild hospitals or bakeries, there's a very, very strong chance that Hamas will use those to rebuild its terror capabilities. And there will have to be very, very extensive enforcement mechanisms with close American oversight in order to prevent that from happening.
Asher Fredman from the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.